Welcome back for episode 64 of the Andy Talks Energy podcast. I'm your host, Andy Ray. It's been a while since I uploaded a fresh episode. I've been re-uploading those archived episodes, and I'm so glad you guys are enjoying those just based off of the comments and the 5-star ratings. Can't thank you guys enough, and it delights me to share the progression of this show with you guys. But yeah, high time for a fresh episode. There is so much to talk about. Let me tell you what I have on the schedule for this episode. First things first, I am going to make fun of ICE because you knew I was gonna. And then I'm going to talk about spiritual TikTok and make fun of it for a little bit because it has this newfound interest in politics that it told me off for just a few short years ago. I'm so glad everyone caught up to the fact that spirituality has to be incorporated into your daily life and actually applied to real world scenarios like fucking politics and who you vote for. Then I'm going to talk about a client testimonial that is pretty fucking cool because speaking of integrating one's spiritual beliefs and spiritual principles into one's real life and real work, my clients are definitely doing that. Then I'm going to talk about some unfortunate things that have unfolded in the past couple of weeks that have been coming up in readings, both private and group readings, for the past 2 months. So 0% surprised, but 100% horrified. And speaking of horror, I am not going to talk about horror movies this episode. I'm going to tell you what I'm watching currently and encourage you guys to check it out as well. Then I'm going to tell you when my Zoom groups and private readings are going to be available. They are currently, but I'll give you dates and details towards the end of this episode. So let's get started. I think it's both wonderful and horrible that we have a front row seat to every awful thing that the government does. I am very far removed from the places where these things are happening, so I do appreciate everyone's dedication to making sure things get accurately recorded. I watched the videos out of respect for the people affected. So upon scrolling through said footage, I had the misfortune of catching a clip where an ICE person, I hesitate to call them agents because that implies, some kind of decorum and training, but this ICE guy was holding his firearm sideways like this. And that's going to be a problem for me. For those of you unfamiliar with my resume, I was an All-American and a coach in the shooting sports. I taught firearm safety to women and teens. I also worked at a gun counter in a sporting goods store when I was in college, and I can say definitively that holding one's firearm like this indicates a lack of training. And it was actually really alarming to see someone calling themselves a federal agent dead ass holding their gun sideways like this, like a gangster. It's giving theater kid. It's giving like if you were an extra in a Lifetime movie about inner city gangs and the director was like, yeah, hold the gun like this so you look more menacing. That's what that sideways gun thing is giving. And if you're surprised to hear me talking about this on my spiritual mediumship podcast, you must be new here because I've been talking about the intersection between spirituality and politics and real world subjects since the very beginning, all the way back to my YouTube channel that I started in 2020. So that brings me to what I was going to say next about spiritual TikTok and their newfound interest in politics. I got ripped to shreds for talking about politics and spirituality and how those two things play together back in 2022. So I'm so glad everyone caught up. There are people out there on TikTok right now preaching about spiritual bypassing who actually ripped my ass a new one back in 2022 for talking about politics and spirituality in the same video. So I'm so glad they caught up. Anyway, let's talk about this really interesting client testimonial. Very political adjacent. Again, my clients use the information that comes up in their readings to go out in the world and be amazing, and I couldn't be more proud. She says, "Hi, Andy. I hope you're having a good week. This is Miss C, and we had a reading a couple of months ago. One of the main topics of conversation was whether I should move abroad. Your response was that I'm needed here. Your reaction to receiving that information was surprisingly strong, and I should have asked about it at the time. My assumption was that I was needed here in the broader political realm. However, I've realized in the past couple of days that being needed here is more about the work I've been doing regarding the quality of legal representation by Child Protective Services, and it's working with the state legislature. And I'm going to skip over some details here. And she goes on to say, then I went up the chain at CPS, begging in an email that someone higher up observe what's actually going on in the courtrooms. 2 people from CPS came to one of the many children's courts in the region for about 3 hours, and nothing changed. I wrote again, asking for a conversation with a higher up about my concerns, and received no response. I wrote to the governor's office with no response. I wrote to 2 state legislators with no response. Mind you, all of these individuals expressed deep concerns about CPS's problems. Ironically, a state legislator popped up on my FYP on TikTok, and I know her from doing a training with her 12 years ago. She responded immediately to my DM, and we're meeting next week to discuss strategy, including my appearance at committee hearings. She has lots of ideas, and I can't wait to see what kind of good trouble we can get into. So far, it looks like my persistence is paying off. No one else is looking into how critical these issues are, and I'm going to be able to shed some light on it. And as I think I expressed to you, I have practiced law for 39 years, and at my age of 73, I really don't care who I piss off. I know this email is long and probably too detailed, but I wanted to let you know about these developments and to thank you for your help. Best, Miss C. So thank you, Miss C, for sending that in. There is no such thing as too detailed when it comes to feedback messages. And I am just crazy proud of every client I have who takes the information they receive during their reading seriously and actually uses that information to improve their lives and the lives of others. I debated about whether or not I should keep this segment in this episode, just because I don't like to capitalize on tragedy to reiterate that I am good at my job. However, this is some pretty profound stuff. People have big questions about this. People wonder, are certain events fated to happen? Are certain things meant to be? And I don't know if this information directly addresses that question with the nuance it deserves, but it does imply that certain outcomes were certainly in progress. So some things that I distinctly recall popping up in readings include the following: Honda pilots, Minneapolis, Minnesota, the name Tim, and people kicking out taillights. So yeah, those are things that came up in group readings and in private readings enough times that I took note. And if you're wondering how my guides and my departed loved ones, and by extension your departed loved ones, conveyed the concept of the government firing upon the people to me, they showed me an image from history. And they do that pretty much anytime there's going to be something in the headlines that is similar to a historical event. They will show me the historical event. They kept showing me this very famous print illustration of the Boston Massacre. So that's how that concept was relayed to me during readings with clients leading up to this whole situation in Minnesota. So basically a comparison was being drawn from a historical event to a current event. And that's how they convey to me pretty much every major headline, is they'll point out something that happened in history that has similar themes. Unfortunately, governments make the same mistakes over and over and over again. You know what they say, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So here we are, kind of repeating it. And anyway, that's how they conveyed that image to me. They just showed me a famous illustration of the Boston Massacre. I saw a really interesting TikTok. This is so off topic. I didn't put this on the schedule. But I saw this really interesting TikTok where a teacher was talking to her other teacher friends, and they came to the disturbing conclusion that kids these days are looking at the images in their history textbooks and watching clips of footage from World War II and historical events that have happened since the invention of the video camera. And they don't realize that the images they're seeing are real images. They think they're AI generated illustrations or approximations of what happened. They don't realize they're actually looking at real photos and videos. And that actually blew my mind. Because as important as it is to identify, fake images these days, it's equally important to know when you're looking at the real thing. So just crazy to me that that's even a thing, but apparently it is. So normally at this point in the program, I would recommend a scary movie to watch and talk about whatever metaphors in there that I think are relevant. But I am actually not feeling it this week because I feel like we're living in a horror movie. This is the worst possible timeline. So instead, I'm going to recommend some more uplifting programming, patriotic programming, if you will. I am currently watching Turn, Washington Spies. I'm only about 6 episodes into season 1, but I'm really enjoying it. It has the most inaccurate, terrible costumes I've ever seen in a Revolutionary War era production, but we're going to let that slide, and we're going to say it's a fun, interesting watch, and it's got kind of a feminist flair to it. It's not overt, but you'll know it when you see it. I was an immediate fan of the HBO series John Adams. So if you haven't seen that, you can check that out. Costumes, considerably better, though not perfect. Like, that's the least interesting takeaway of the whole show. The whole show is really interesting. And it's based on the David McCullough book, John Adams, which I did read most of when I was a senior in high school. And if you're dead set on watching a horror movie, I'm going to go ahead and still recommend the HBO series John Adams, because when you think about it, tarring and feathering absolutely is body horror. If you would like to schedule a private mediumship or psychic reading, you can do that through my official website, andyraymedium.com. There's going to be a link in the show notes. If you'd like to join in on the February 24th Zoom group event, there's also going to be a link in the show notes. It's a 6-person Zoom group. Everyone gets a reading, runs for about 2 hours. We stand a pretty good chance of actually finishing on time. It's about half full, so if you'd like to grab some of those remaining seats, again, there's going to be a link in the show notes. And I think that's everything for now. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you guys for my next fresh episode, which I'm actually going to do some more fresh episodes in a row here, but I'll be throwing in some archived episodes intermittently as well. All right, see you guys next time. Toodles.